Hi, Julia, your recipes for a sweet life. I'm back with more chocolate videos. This time we are making something very special and sparkly for New Year's or for any other festive time of the year. We are making little chocolate stenciled luster sprayed dessert cups. You can fill them with berries or mousse. In this case, we're actually going to be filling them with a cupcake and icing to make a jazzed up cupcake liner. So let's get started. Okay, so you'll need to start with a high-grade chocolate, either a coating chocolate that won't need tempering or a real chocolate that would need to be tempered. Optional cocoa butter crystals to thin the chocolate for better spreadability. We'll be spreading it onto an acetate sheet with a small offset spatula and wrapping it around a ring mold or a stainless steel cylinder lined with parchment paper. This is 2 3/4 inches in diameter. We'll be stenciling then with a combination of frosting sheets cut with craft paper punches and sprayed with luster spray. Okay, let's start by preparing our cylinder. You want to wrap it with parchment paper and you want to make sure that parchment paper is taller than the height of the acetate. My acetate is about 2.5 inches tall and it's about 9.5 inches long enough to wrap around my 2 3/4 inch cylinder. I've got a little formula at the bottom of the screen to help you with the length. My chocolate is melted. I'm using a coating chocolate, so I just have to melt it. But if you're using a real chocolate, you want to temper it and then clean off that acetate strip really well before you put any chocolate on it. Any smudges or fingerprints will be picked up by the chocolate. I'm just spreading this as thinly as possible. I don't want to see through the chocolate in any areas, but I don't want it very thick. So you may have to go over it a couple of times. Don't worry about the overflow. You want to cover the entire acetate strip. We'll get rid of that overflow by lifting it up as I'm doing here. I'm going to catch the edge with my paring knife and then move it over onto a clean surface. I don't want any chocolate on the back of the acetate or it will be hard to get the acetate off the cylinder later. Now I'm working with a coating chocolate that doesn't need tempering and it sets up really quickly at room temperature. I've just set it aside for a couple of minutes at room temperature and it's ready to wrap around the cylinder. So it's set to the point that it's not dripping, but it's pliable and won't break when I wrap it around the cylinder. And that's what you're looking for, pliability without the chocolate breaking. You can also accelerate this process in the refrigerator, but you do want to watch the chocolate carefully because it will very quickly set there. Just going to wrap it around using the bottom of the cylinder as a guide to get it straight. And I don't want to press too hard at the seam or it'll be hard to get the acetate off later. Just gently press it so that the acetate doesn't flop open. Now you do want to chill it thoroughly so that you can take the acetate off. Okay, at this point we want the chocolate to completely set, and as I said, I often accelerate it in the refrigerator. You just want to make sure if you do that you don't leave it in too long because moisture can collect under the acetate and leave some spots on the chocolate. I have a few here that you might be able to notice. They're not the end of the world. You can avoid that by setting the chocolate at room temperature if you're using a coating chocolate or you've tempered the chocolate. Just gently peel away that acetate. I do like to score along the back seam if it has been closed shut with a sharp paring knife. I often heat the paring knife to do this, and that just allows the cylinder on the inside to come out more easily without breaking the chocolate. You don't always have to do that, but it's a great safeguard against breaking the chocolate. Okay, so we're ready to take out the cylinder now that we've got the seam scored open, and just do that ever so gently, pulling up from the top. The parchment paper will sometimes come with it, sometimes it won't. You just want to make sure you're not handling the chocolate at this point with your fingers because you'll leave fingerprints and you just don't want to see those. Now I want to close that seam with a little more melted chocolate. The key thing here is to make sure that chocolate isn't too hot or it will actually melt open the seam as opposed to closing it shut. But that looks pretty good. I'm just going to get a little bit more chocolate here at the top. Okay, we're ready to stencil. Here's my frosting sheet, and I'm going to cut it with a craft paper punch. This is a Martha Stewart punch that I got at the craft store, and it's going to make a really beautiful pattern. The cool thing about stenciling with frosting sheets is that they are edible, they're food safe, but they're also super conformable. So this is going to fit really nicely around the sides of my chocolate without any gaps and leave a really clean stencil, unlike normal acetate stencils, which wouldn't wrap around the chocolate very easily. I'm just going to trim this up. Now you could leave the frosting sheet on the chocolate without taking it off, but I think the frosting sheet, the papery aspect of it kind of interferes with the creamy quality of the chocolate, so I like to just stencil through it. I'm just going to attach it to the back of the chocolate along the seam with a touch of corn syrup. We don't want too much, we just want enough to keep the stencil there during the course of stenciling. And we're just going to work it all the way around. Here I'm handling the paper. I'm not touching the chocolate as I'm working the stencil around because, again, I don't want to leave fingerprints. And I'm just going to, again, secure it in the back with a little bit of corn syrup Actually, come to think of it, I need to cut a bit of this away so that the overlapping piece of paper doesn't interfere with the pattern on the other side. I won't get a clean stencil if it's overlapping. Again, just a touch of corn syrup because we do want to remove this easily at the end, and only touch the paper, don't handle the chocolate at this point. Okay, I'm just going to work my way around again, make sure that the stencil's all the way flat, conforming to the surface of the chocolate. If it lifts off the chocolate, we'll get some underspray and we won't get a really clean impression. I'm working with PME Bronze Luster Spray. I love the contrast, but gold or pearl would also look beautiful. And of course, you could also airbrush here, as the sprays tend to be less controllable. You do want to spray it at a distance to avoid spots like that. I got a little too much there, but not the end of the world. Now to remove the stencil, once you've sprayed, I'm just using my trussing needle to disengage the paper in the back. And I'm just going to gently pull off the stencil. No rocket science here. But the key thing in stenciling is to make sure that that stencil is completely flat against the chocolate so you don't get any underspray. And that looks just beautiful. Here at the back end, again, I just want to pull gently. I notice I have a crack here in the back, but that's the back of the dessert, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Okay, now we're ready to fill the cup. Here I do like to use plastic gloves because there's no paper to hold on to and I don't want to leave any fingerprints. Simply move it on over, drop my cupcake in. You could fill it with anything, but I'm using a cupcake today. And I've got a really short cupcake because I love icing. I'm going to be filling mine with my Italian buttercream. This Italian buttercream, I've actually added 4 ounces of melted chocolate to give it this light chocolate quality. And I've got a whole video on how to make this buttercream, so you might want to check that out. I just think a simple swirl looks really elegant, maybe topped with a gold dragée to tie into the color on the sides of the cupcake liner. Hey gang, so pretty easy, right? I've got plenty of these to fill for my dinner party tomorrow night, so I'm not going to keep you much longer, but I did want to remind you that I've got plenty of other chocolate videos, including some that I recently shot, including chocolate leaves that are perfect for this time of year. So I encourage you to check them out. Till then, live sweetly.